Good morning, student. Myself, Professor Dhaval Chandanana. Today I will start my video lecture with help of data management system subject of unit number 2 known as a data model. In my previous lecture, we will start a different basic fundamental of entity relations model. We will continue on the different other fundamentals with help of example. So today we will discuss the example of ER diagram as well as a types of attributes which is define a different concept of ER diagram. With help of example, we will just understand how the particular ER diagram will be work and how we can represent a different entity, attributes, and how we can connect a different entity with the relationship sets. Let's see with the example. So we will take a ER diagram of library system management. So start with the different entity known as a student and book, because whenever we take an example of library system or we can say library management system, there are the two entity which is most prior require of library system known as a student and book. So there are the different entity known as a student and book will part of a library system ER diagram. Now we can take a different attributes of a student entity as well as we can define a different attributes of a book entities. Start with the roll number. Roll number, it is one of the part of student entity. Second, known as a name, it is also a part of student. Third one is known as a branch, and fourth one is a SEM. With help of all the fourth information known as a roll number, name, branch and SEM, we can easily identify a particular student with help of different attributes. So it is the just define the basic fundamental things. With help of different attributes, we can easily identify our particular entities. Next, we need to define a different attributes of book known as a book number, name, author and price. So there are the four different attributes of a particular book entities. I will just mention a different basic attributes. If you want to mention different attributes with a particular book entity, you can easily mention like a particular ISBN number and rest of all. So with the help of these two entities known as a student and book, we have mentioned a library management system of ER diagram. Now we provide a connection between a student and book entity with help of relationship known as a issue. Means whenever we require to manage a library system with help of ER diagram, we need to define first a two entity known as a student and book with the connections of issue. So issue is the relationship between student and book. With help of relationship sets, we can easily identify that in a database, whenever we create a student table and whenever we create a book table, we need to provide a connectivity between a student table and book table. So we can getting the information which student connect or which student issued a particular book and which book are issued by a particular student. So it is very easy to identify and it's very important to represent a particular pictorial symbols with help of ER diagram. Roll number and book number is defined a underline, and in a ER diagram whenever we define a underline between any of the attributes, it is known as a primary key. So it is one of the identifications where we define an underline of any of the attribute, it is mentioned as a primary key. Each and every entity must have one primary key attribute. So as based on a primary key, we can easily identify a particular student name, branch or semester with help of roll number known as a primary key. So primary key, the most important concept of ER diagram, and with the representations of underline, we can easily identify it is known as a primary key. Relationship between two entity is called a binary relationship. Whenever we are justified a two entity connected with the different relationship, so it is known as a binary relationship. In my previous lecture, we can define a ternary relationship with help of student, project as well as a faculty connection between a guide of ternary relationship. At that time we are defined a three different entity known as faculty, student as well as project. In particular example, we are connected two entities known as a student and book with help of issue relationship, so it's called as a binary relationship. Next, a types of attribute. We can define a different types of attribute because whenever we represent a different ER diagram with help of attributes, we need to identify how many different kind of attributes will be available and what are the different graphical representations. So it's very easy to understand, and it is the most important concept whenever we require to represent more attribute on a single entity. So with the justify of simple attributes as well as a composite attributes, a simple attributes cannot be divided into the subparts, but in composite attributes we can divide into the subparts. Example, roll number and CPI, we can't divide it, that's why it's known as a simple attributes. And a name known as a first name, middle name and last name, means whenever we define a name attributes, we can divide a three different section known as a first name of student, middle name of student and last name of student. So a different partition of a single attributes known as a name, it's known as a composite attributes. Second thing, it is known as a address. With help of address we can identify the composite attribute. Address, it should be divided in a three different address like a street address, road address and city address. So as per example says, a simple attributes and composite attribute we can see with the example. Whatever the attributes is divided with a help of different section, or we can say different identification, it is known as a composite attribute. But if we can't divide any kind of attribute, it is known as a simple attribute. Symbol known as a attribute is known as oval, so it is identified with the roll number. But whenever we represent a composite attribute, it is identified or represent with the different oval symbol and connected with the single line. Second type known as a single value attributes and known as a multi-value attributes. In a single value attributes has a single value, means there are only single value, we can't define a multiple things on a particular attributes. In a multiple value attributes have the multiple values. Example like roll number and CPI, there are the only single information, we can justify a single values. But whenever we represent a multi attributes, there are the different value on a single attributes. Like if it mentions a phone number, they can divide, a persons may have a multiple phone numbers, email address, person have a multiple email address. So whenever a person have a different information with the same attributes, known as a multi-value attributes. Single value attributes represent with the single oval, and multiple value attributes it represent a multiple oval and provide a attributes name with a different oval. Third thing, known as a store attributes and a derived attributes. A store attributes, its value is stored manually in a database, means whenever end user store a particular information, we can define or we can store in a manual manner. And derived attributes, it's a value, it's derived or calculated from other attributes. Like if we want to derive some of the information which are provided by the user, but we can't take a particular information from the user sides, so it is known as a derived attributes. Like we store a data of birth date a particular users it from the end user, but we can calculate with help of birth date attributes, we can represent a particular person's age, so it is known as a derived attribute. We can't take a age from the users, we just store a birth date and perform some calculation and represent the age with help of derived attributes. Representation of store attribute, it is a simple oval, but whenever we require to represent a derived attribute, it is represented with the dashed ovals. Now third thing, an entity with all types of attributes, it is represent with a different diagram known as a single attributes, multi-value attributes, store attributes, derived attributes, multi-value attributes. All the things should be part of a single diagram. A student had entity have a age, it is known as a derived attributes. Student have phone number with the multi attributes element, it is known as a birth date, it is a store attributes. Name, it is a simple attributes, but multiple value attributes like known as name as a first name, middle name, last name. Student entity have a roll number with underline because we need to represent a roll number as a primary key. Multi-value attributes address known as a apartment, street and area. So all the attribute it is represent with the different symbol. I will just provide a simple example with help of all the attributes. I hope you are like this video, and through the basic fundamentals you can easy to build a particular ER diagram example. So single value attributes, multi-value attributes, all the representation with different example. Second thing, it is known as descriptive attributes. A attribute of the relationship is called as a descriptive attributes. Means whatever the attributes relationship is called known as a descriptive attributes. Means we can take a previous example like a student and book have relationship between a binary relation known as a issued. So when attributes of the relation, attributes means a roll number, name, branch and semester, with a relationship of book number, name, author and price, they mention with a descriptive attributes. So issue date, the attributes which are connected between student entity and book entity, there are the different attributes which are connected with the single attributes known as a issue date. It is represent with the descriptive attributes. So up to now we will stop this particular video and start with the different fundamental thing in my next video. Thank you so much.